The manager's voice tore through the store, loud enough to freeze conversations mid-sentence. "How many times do I have to tell you? Get it right or get out." A young employee, barely out of training, stood trembling, clutching a stack of inventory sheets. Customers shifted awkwardly, pretending to browse, pretending not to hear. And just a few feet away, near the entrance, a man in a plain polo shirt watched. He didn't flinch. He didn't turn away. His eyes followed every word, every movement, each small humiliation that unfolded in plain view. He wasn't just another bystander. He was waiting. His name was Jordan Hayes. On paper, he was a new hire, a quiet man starting fresh, one name among dozens on a crowded employee roster. In truth, Jordan was the chief executive officer of the entire company. The very walls around them bore his name, though no one here seemed to notice. He had traded his tailored suits for worn-out jeans, his polished office for a storeroom floor. All to see, with his own eyes, what reports and meetings could never fully show. Across the room stood Vanessa Reed, the store manager. Quick to command, quicker to condemn. Praised by upper management for her numbers, feared by those who worked under her for everything else. She didn't just enforce rules. She wielded them. And those who didn't meet her standards, or didn't fit her mold, felt it in every shift, every meeting, every glance. Vanessa valued control. Respect, to her, came from obedience, not from trust. And anyone who questioned her, especially the young, the quiet, or those who stood out for reasons they could not change, found themselves pushed further to the edges. Jordan saw it all. And he wasn't here to take notes. He was here to remember. Every word, every face, every choice. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. The first morning on the floor, Jordan watched from a quiet corner as Vanessa barked orders across the store, her voice slicing through the steady hum of business. "You," she snapped at a young cashier fumbling with a register code. "If you can't handle basic math, maybe you should go back to school." The boy's face burned red. He apologized, scrambling to fix the mistake under her withering gaze. Jordan watched without blinking. To most customers, it was just a tense moment. Nothing more. But to those who worked there, it was part of a pattern. Later that same day, Jordan saw Vanessa corner a woman near the back storeroom. Maria, one of the stock supervisors, barely 5 feet tall, shuffled nervously under Vanessa's stare. "Your English is terrible," Vanessa said, loud enough for others to hear. "How do you expect to manage inventory if you can't even read the labels?" Jordan saw Maria's hands tighten around the clipboard she was holding. Her mouth opened slightly, as if to argue, then closed again. She nodded once and hurried away. Every word was measured to wound. Every insult was hidden behind a paper-thin mask of standards. In meetings, it was no different. Jordan sat quietly at a battered table in the back room, pretending to scribble notes. Around him, tired faces looked down at their clipboards, avoiding Vanessa's gaze. She paced in front of them like a general inspecting soldiers, calling out mistakes in front of the group. She didn't raise her voice in these meetings. She didn't have to. The sharpness of her words carried the same sting. "Some of you," she said, looking directly at an older black team lead named Marcus, "seem to think showing up is the same thing as doing your job." She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Jordan noticed the patterns. The harsher critiques always fell on certain employees. The dismissive tones, the backhanded comments, never at random. He noticed who got extra shifts. Who got written warnings. Jordan's questions during training sessions drew cold looks from Vanessa. "Why aren't there regular feedback sessions for employees?" he asked one afternoon. Vanessa laughed. "Feedback? They can't even handle instructions. You want to hand them trophies for breathing too." The laughter she expected didn't come. A few employees kept their heads down. One or two risked quick glances at Jordan, small, almost invisible flashes of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, someone was listening. By the end of the first week, Jordan had seen enough to know this wasn't about bad management. It was about something deeper. A culture of fear, stitched carefully into the seams of everyday work. A hierarchy built not on ability, but on favoritism and intimidation. And Jordan knew something else. Vanessa had no idea who he really was. No idea that the man stacking boxes beside her was the very person who could decide the future of her career with a single meeting. He stayed silent, watching, waiting. Every moment she mistreated someone, every small injustice she thought would go unnoticed, Jordan was there. He was there when Marcus was written up unfairly for poor attitude, moments after asking why schedules seemed to favor newer, less qualified employees. He was there when Maria's request for an extra Spanish-language training manual was met with a cold, mocking laugh. He was there when a young cashier named Deshawn was forced to mop up a spill during his lunch break, while others stood idly by. Every act, every word, every look, catalogued. Not for revenge. For something else. Something much larger. Jordan knew. It was only a matter of time before Vanessa made a mistake she couldn't undo. Jordan didn't need to force mistakes. He just needed time. Each day, he asked questions that didn't quite match the role he was pretending to have. "How often are promotions reviewed?" he asked during a casual conversation near the break room. Vanessa frowned, suspicious. "That's none of your concern. Promotions are earned, not handed out." She said it with a hard smile, the kind meant to shut down further conversation. Jordan just nodded, scribbling something harmless on a clipboard. During inventory checks, he took more notes than anyone else, but not about stock numbers. About people. About choices. "You act like you're writing a book," one of the newer employees joked one afternoon. Jordan chuckled lightly. "Just making sure I remember the important things," he said. On a rainy Thursday, an unexpected shipment arrived. Vanessa was furious. "Who signed for this?" she demanded, storming toward the receiving bay. Jordan stepped forward. "I did," he said calmly. "It matched the manifest." Vanessa glared at him. "You don't make those calls. You're not in charge." Jordan didn't argue. He simply stood his ground, quietly returning her stare. Something about the way he carried himself, steady, unshaken, unsettled her for a moment. But only for a moment. Later that same day, Jordan requested to see a copy of the store's employee handbook. Vanessa handed it over with a tight smile. "Study it," she said. "Might help you survive longer around here." She didn't notice the way Jordan flipped straight to the sections on harassment and discrimination, reading them word for word. She didn't notice how he asked small, careful questions, questions that made a few employees glance at each other in silent recognition. She didn't notice how he listened more than he spoke, or that every time she cut someone down, he seemed less and less like a new hire, and more like something else. One afternoon, as Vanessa berated Marcus yet again for a minor error, Jordan caught Marcus's eye. A small nod. Barely there. A silent message. "I see you." Marcus didn't know who Jordan really was. None of them did. But slowly, quietly, a shift had begun. Employees who once kept their heads low started sneaking glances toward Jordan when Vanessa raised her voice. A tiny flicker of something returning to their faces, something Vanessa had spent months, maybe years, trying to erase. Respect could be demanded through fear. But trust had to be earned. And in a place ruled by intimidation, even a stranger's kindness could feel like a revolution. Jordan didn't wear a badge. He didn't make threats. He didn't reveal his authority. He didn't have to. Time was doing the work for him. And soon, Vanessa would hand him everything he needed, without even realizing it. It happened on a Saturday. One of the busiest days of the month. The store buzzed with customers weaving through aisles, shopping carts rattling over uneven tiles. Jordan was assigned to help with a new end cap display. So was Deshawn, the young cashier Vanessa often singled out for the smallest mistakes. They worked silently side by side, stacking promotional items and adjusting signs, when Vanessa stormed toward them, clipboard in hand. "This isn't how I told you to do it," she snapped, her voice cutting through the aisle. Deshawn froze, mid-reach. Jordan turned slowly, meeting her glare with steady eyes. Customers nearby pretended not to watch. Employees stiffened behind counters. "Fix it," Vanessa barked at Deshawn, ignoring Jordan entirely. "And while you're at it, try acting like you actually have a brain." Deshawn's hands tightened around a box he was holding. He said nothing, but the hurt in his face was unmistakable. Jordan stepped forward. Deliberate. "It's fine," he said quietly. "We followed the setup diagram exactly. I double-checked it myself." Vanessa rounded on him. "I wasn't talking to you," she said sharply. Jordan didn't flinch. "Respectfully," he said, his voice low but firm, "you shouldn't talk to him that way either." For a second, the store seemed to pause. Even the overhead music felt too loud. Vanessa's face turned a shade darker. She took a step closer, standing just inches from Jordan. "Who do you think you are?" she hissed under her breath. Jordan simply looked at her. Silent. "If you have a problem with how I run this store," Vanessa said, louder now, for others to hear, "you can leave. Right now." Deshawn lowered his head, his shoulders stiff. Jordan didn't move. "I'm here to work," he said simply. Just like everyone else. Vanessa stared him down for a long, tense moment, then turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath. The moment passed. But it left a scar. That night, word spread quietly among the employees. That someone had finally stood up to Vanessa. That someone had dared to speak the words they had swallowed for months. Jordan knew he had crossed a line. But it was a line that had to be crossed. Over the next few days, Vanessa's behavior shifted, but not for the better. She became sharper, quicker to anger. Her criticisms grew harsher, more personal. Employees who spoke to Jordan outside of work assignments found themselves reassigned to worse shifts. Lunch breaks were shortened without explanation. Written warnings appeared over minor infractions. Vanessa was trying to reassert control the only way she knew how, through fear. But Jordan didn't flinch. He stayed late to help restock when others were sent home early. He volunteered for shifts that others dreaded. He took every punishment Vanessa tried to hand him, and handed her back nothing but patience. Behind the scenes, a quiet resistance was forming. Employees began to share stories, comparing notes, realizing their struggles were not isolated. They began to understand. The problem wasn't them. It was her. One evening, long after the store had closed, Jordan stayed behind to help Marcus finish a heavy inventory shift. As they worked in silence, Marcus finally spoke. "You're different," he said, voice low, almost cautious. Jordan smiled faintly. "Just trying to do my part," he said. Marcus studied him for a long moment. "Feels like you're doing more than that." Jordan didn't answer. He just tightened a strap around a pallet of boxes and moved it into place. The night shift lights buzzed overhead. A clock ticked loudly against the back wall. The storm was coming. Jordan could feel it. And this time, Vanessa wouldn't be able to shout her way out of it. Monday morning. The air in the store was stiff. Employees moved quietly, heads low, conversations clipped. Over the weekend, Vanessa had suspended Deshawn for insubordination. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't disobeyed. He had simply walked away when she raised her voice. That was enough. Jordan showed up early that day. Earlier than anyone else. He stood outside the locked glass doors, watching his reflection. In his hand was a thin black folder. Inside it, photographs, written statements, time card records, shift schedules, internal memos. He had been collecting them for weeks. Not for revenge. For accountability. At 9 o'clock sharp, Vanessa called a floor meeting. It wasn't routine. Everyone was required to attend. Attendance is mandatory, the store PA system had said. Employees gathered near the loading area. The air was tense. A few glanced at Jordan. He said nothing. Just stood in the corner, arms folded, watching. Vanessa arrived late. Clipboard in hand. Glasses perched low on her nose. "Let's get one thing straight," she began, her voice firm. "This store runs because I make sure it does. Not because of complaints, not because of gossip, and certainly not because some of you think you know better." A few heads turned. She continued. "Anyone who feels this workplace isn't fair, well, you know where the door is." Her tone was cold. Her eyes scanned the room like a drill sergeant. Then Jordan stepped forward. Slowly, quietly, holding the black folder in both hands. Vanessa turned, clearly annoyed. "Something to add, Jason," she said, using the name she thought was his. Jordan didn't answer. He stood before the group and opened the folder. "I want to read something," he said. His voice was even, clear. He pulled out a sheet of paper. It was Deshawn's incident report. He read it aloud. Every word. Vanessa shifted. "This isn't the place for." Jordan held up a hand. Not rudely. Just enough to stop her. Then he pulled out another paper. Marcus's report from 2 weeks prior. Then a third. And a fourth. One by one, he laid out the pattern. Not just mistakes. Abuse. Targeted. Consistent. Vanessa tried to interrupt again. But the room had shifted. No one looked at her anymore. They were all looking at Jordan. Finally, he closed the folder. He took a breath. Then looked directly at Vanessa. "I think it's time I introduced myself properly." A pause. The silence was deep. Even the hum of the air conditioning felt distant. "My name is Jordan Ellis," he said. A murmur ran through the room. A few employees turned sharply. One woman gasped. "I'm the CEO of this company." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Vanessa went pale. You You're the temp? The new guy? Jordan nodded slowly. I came here to see how this branch operated. Not from a report. Not from a quarterly briefing. But in person. He turned to face the team. What I found was dedication. Hard work. People showing up on time, doing their jobs, despite everything. He turned back to Vanessa. And I also found a problem. Vanessa opened her mouth. No words came out. She looked around the room. No one met her gaze. Not anymore. Jordan handed the folder to the HR representative who had quietly entered the room moments earlier. No one had noticed her at first. Everything's documented, Jordan said. From here, it goes by the book. Then he stepped back. The meeting was over. But everything had changed. Vanessa didn't return the next day. Or the day after that. Officially, it was called a temporary administrative leave. Internally, it was clear. The investigation had begun. HR conducted interviews. They reviewed every file. Every complaint that had been ignored. Every shift schedule she manipulated. Every write-up that had no backing. And one by one, the employees spoke. Not with bitterness. Not with revenge. But with the kind of quiet truth that's been waiting too long to be heard. Jordan didn't sit in on the interviews. He didn't need to. He spent that week doing the same thing he'd done since day one. Stocking shelves, helping customers, taking out the trash. The only difference was the name on his badge. Now it read, Jordan Ellis, Chief Executive Officer. Some employees laughed when they saw it. Some just nodded. But everyone, every single one, looked him in the eye. That hadn't happened before. By Friday, HR made its final call. Vanessa's contract was terminated. Effective immediately. The staff received the announcement via email. Short. Formal. But word spread fast. The next morning, Jordan called a staff meeting. This time, there were no clipboards. No lectures. Just Jordan, standing in front of them like he had on his very first day. You don't need a speech, he said. You already know how to run this store. He paused. But what you do need, what every team needs, is a leader who sees you, listens to you, respects you. He didn't say Vanessa's name. He didn't have to. He looked around the room. At Marcus. At Deshawn, now reinstated with an apology and paid leave. At Yvette, who hadn't spoken during team meetings in over a year, now raising her hand with suggestions. Then Jordan said something no one expected. I'm not staying. A hush fell over the room. My job was never to replace Vanessa. My job was to understand what was broken, and make sure it gets fixed the right way. He nodded toward the assistant manager, a quiet, steady woman named Carla. Effective Monday, Carla will be acting store manager. HR will begin training and support immediately. Carla blinked. Her hand trembled slightly, but she stepped forward. The team broke into applause. Not out of politeness, not out of fear, but because it finally felt right. That evening, Jordan stood alone in the back of the store. The lights dimmed. The hum of the refrigerators echoed softly through the aisles. He picked up a box left behind near aisle 9, tucked it back into place. And as he walked out the automatic doors, employees waved goodbye from inside. Not to a CEO, not to a stranger, but to someone who had walked beside them, when no one else would. There was no press release, no headlines, no viral videos, just a store that started to feel different. Carla kept her door open. Team meetings included everyone. Performance went up, not because people feared losing their jobs, but because they felt seen. Yvette got promoted to training supervisor. Marcus started mentoring part-timers after shifts. Deshawn, once suspended, helped design a diversity and culture handbook the company rolled out nationwide. No one called it a comeback. Because for most of them, it wasn't. It was the first time they ever got to just show up and be themselves. And Jordan, he returned to the head office. Sat in a glass-walled room with an empty chair across from him. He didn't forget their faces. Or the way Vanessa's voice sounded when she was challenged. Or the moment a young black man chose to walk away from disrespect, not with anger, but with quiet self-respect. That moment mattered. It spoke louder than yelling ever could. It's easy to write policies. It's harder to notice the tiny power plays. The small humiliations that don't show up in reports. Jordan had seen it now. Up close. And he made sure the people in charge of hiring and promotion had seen it too. Across the company, store leaders were rotated. Feedback systems were redesigned, anonymous, direct, and mandatory. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. The lesson: power reveals character, but lack of power reveals it too. And leadership isn't about control. It's about trust. The kind you can't fake. The kind people feel, even if you say nothing. So next time someone lower down the ladder walks away instead of arguing, maybe ask yourself what made them choose silence. And if you're the one in charge, ask if your team shows up because they have to, or because they believe you see them. That's what this story is really about. One manager lost her job. But more importantly, an entire team got theirs back. What would you have done if you were the CEO? Drop your answer in the comments. Because stories like this, they don't end when the video does.